Hello there, Salim Omar here from the Straight Talk About Small Business Success podcast. Man, I am so excited. We've got a special guest. Her name is Alyson Caffrey. Alyson, welcome.
Salim, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, Alyson, I'm so excited. I'm going to quickly share with folks your bio. You're a small business operations strategist. You're a best-selling author, founder of Operations Agency. You're best known for helping streamline the backend for a multitude of brands using your Operations Simplified framework to unleash the power of small teams. So Alyson left board meetings, consulting eight-figure companies on their operations to serve parentpreneurs running small businesses. She believes that if she can return fulfilled founders back to their families, she can generate a much larger impact in the world. So this topic really resonates a lot with me, Alison. And the reason it resonates a lot with me is because I own an accounting firm, as you know, for 27 some years called Straight Talk. And I own a couple of other operations businesses as well. And operations is so critical because most entrepreneurs, owners, they get sucked into the operations with negative consequences. They cannot grow their business. Their work-life balance, starts kind of it gets in the way of their personal life and so forth. So let's talk about when you talk about operations, what is that? What is your vision? What are you helping a small business owner do in the work you do?
Such a great question. And I agree with you. Operations are so critical to giving a business owner longevity in business. I think the statistic around why a lot of small businesses fail is not because they couldn't find product market fit or because they couldn't make their service work or sell their thing. It's mostly because they didn't figure out how to create sustainability out of the thing that they were offering or trying to create. So I like to always think that whenever we work with somebody at operations agency or whenever I advise a parent on how to create a more self-sustaining business, that we're actually providing them with the opportunity to stay in business, right? To keep this thing going a little bit longer. And so
Mm,
operations, generally speaking, are the back end of the way that the lights stay on at your company. And in my opinion, it's usually three main components. It's your process, so how you do what you do, when you do what you do, and why you do what you do. Really, really important that there's three levels of process in the business. The second is the people, right? So the manual effort, the brains that go behind what exactly you're trying to create, and the systems that you set up internally. So that usually is your key pieces of technology that help the business run. So I always say that at operations agency, we're kind of like pre-EOS, if you're familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system.
I
It's a
am.
super best-selling book, like great read.
Traction, and Rocket
Yes,
Fuel, right? Gino Wickman. Yeah, absolutely.
it's so
Gems.
good. However, Salim, and I don't know if you resonate with this, but the teams I've worked with, 70, 80, 90, and above, absolutely rocket with traction and EOS. However, our smaller teams, our smaller companies, teams of 30 and below, lots of people are wearing multiple hats. Operations may not even have been defined, and there's no person sitting in the seat of operations manager, operations director, COO, because the company can't afford it yet.
Mm,
However, they still desperately need systems. They still desperately need processes that are defined, and they still desperately need people who know what's expected of them and understand and have the training that they need to kind of thrive. So what I think operations are the overlaps between our processes, our people, and our systems. If you think of kind of a three-ring Venn diagram there, and then really our job to define operations behind the scenes of a growing company is to first establish a knowledge base and master the art of knowledge transfer. I personally believe that 99% of the issues that founders face, really letting go of control of a lot of the things that happen inside of their business, are due to the fact that they cannot confidently articulate what is my process, how do I do what I do, and can I create something that somebody else can take and run with it. So building a knowledge base. The second big thing is creating clear project management rules of engagement. So as you're growing your company, you're doing your quarterly initiatives, those need to be consistent. And that's a really big function of operations behind the scenes, right? It's how we're growing. And the third really big domino or thing that needs to fall behind the scenes operationally is you need to have visible data. I say this all the time, but if we don't have a way to track the key performance indicators of how we're operating, I'm not talking about your cash flow statement or your P&L or your balance sheet. That's all past data. I'm talking real-time data, key performance indicators that help us understand how we can iterate today on the things that we're doing so that we can constantly be in a state of improvement with our operations. So that's the quick and dirty version, if you will, of how I think about operations and why we don't have to really go through, a really cumbersome model like EOS, which works fantastically for larger companies and larger teams. But for small teams that don't necessarily have somebody in an operations seat, just getting those three big things knocked out is going to be so beneficial for the growth of the company.
Wow, I like that. So when you talk about a small company, is it like less than 10 employees? That kind of 0 to 10? Is that the size that
Yeah.
you're talking to?
Yeah, I mean, 0 to 10 is a really great incubator for the type of company that will start to need operational structure, right? The needs are there. Everybody's hair is on fire. Nobody can take a vacation or any time off, right? Because everything just falls apart. And so, yeah, those teams of under 10, if one person goes out on, say, vacation, they lose 10% of their staff for a meaningful amount of time. So
Mm,
having consistent operations is really, really important. And I even would imagine, honestly, classifying a really small business as about a team of under 30.
mm, got it. Yeah. And I really like, I mean, in a very quick way, you kind of gave us the big picture of what operations is. Uh, how important this is the starting point, which is the recognition, the realization for the entrepreneur, the owner, that I want to do something about it. What is happening now, the long hours I'm working or the chaos that comes about is unacceptable. So the lack of tolerance. Talk to us a little bit
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah. So the most common symptoms that I see when folks come to me and they're like, man, I really just don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's wrong with my company. They usually start to experience feast or famine months. And
Mm,
so that's where it's very clear that the bandwidth of the team is so limited that when they focus their attention on one thing, it grows, but then something over here dies. And then they focus their attention somewhere else. And we see this really often when founders are still in that sales seat and they'll focus on going out and chasing down new revenue. And then they have to go in and be their own project manager or their own core
right.
fulfillment person. And so it ends up being that you see those inconsistencies. So you can see it with the
Mm,
revenue. You can see it with the amount of work that's coming in the door, right?
mm,
If you're running a service-based business, if you're running a product-based company, right? The amount of orders that you see based on your
yeah.
marketing efforts or anything like that. So for the most part, that's one of the biggest things. The
Mm,
second really big thing is I often find that a lot of people that come to me, they tell me that they're basically just burning the midnight oil on their passion, meaning that in order for everything to stay on time and on pace and on budget, quote unquote budget, right? Because we all know that the founders are the most expensive line item to their business. That they're just staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning to get it all done, or they're waking up super early and they're just basically letting their business creep into their personal life. And that
mm,
affects a litany of different things, right? It affects their physical health and their mental health if they're not sleeping or eating well or exercising or any of those things. That's also affecting their relational health if they have a family at home. And that's super important to me because I know that if I can help a business owner really operate better, right? Have a business that feels more predictable and they can start to actually create more bandwidth in their life, in their personal schedule, and with their family, that is the greatest impact that you can make is just giving parents back to their kids.
yeah. Yeah. So we have yeah, let's imagine a listener listening to this and saying, wow, Alison, Salim, I really get this. I realize I need to do something about it, about the operations. what are a few small baby steps someone can take to get started along this path?
Yeah, this is an excellent question because I believe that now more than ever, with access to technology and our teams being able to work remote, that it's easier than ever to create some of the structure that we need inside of the business. So I would start with domino number one that I talked about earlier, which is building your internal knowledge base and really mastering that art of knowledge transfer, which means if you are stuck in the weeds of your business, whether you are working solo on your own or you have a team of 10, 20, 30, that you are really still involved in a lot of the nuts and bolts of the way the company operates, start to fold your time and record your screen while you're doing certain tasks. I love Loom. It's right on my Chrome extension. And anytime I've got something that's on my plate that I'm managing currently and I know I want to get off of my plate, I record my screen while I'm doing it and I send it to a capable team member who can now handle that thing on my behalf. And if I haven't yet created the budget for another team member in my
Mm,
business that can support me there, at the very least, I know I have a bunch of screencasts that I can send them so that when they sit down in that seat in my company, they can watch all my stuff and start to get stuff done on my behalf. And then they can come back in our meetings and in our trainings and ask me some meaningful questions. So fold your time and start recording your screen. This is one
mm,
of the greatest habits, in my opinion, that you
mm,
can build as a founder is just starting to teach people how you do what you do and
mm,
really depart that knowledge, deposit that knowledge into a central location where people can find it. It'll
mm,
breed autonomy too within your team instead of coming to you and saying, "Hey, Salim, how do I do this?" And you're like, "Oh gosh, that's the third time this week I got this question."
mm,
Instead, we just answer the question and then we train our team to go find their own solutions inside of our knowledge base. And that will do two things. It'll deposit into your knowledge base so that you can continue to grow your company, grow your team, and train people effectively. And it will breed the team to understand that they don't need the founder or the business owner to make all of the decisions or be part of every single piece of the company.
awesome. Love how you shared domino number one, the knowledge transfer, the knowledge, creating the knowledge base. What's so before we go to the second domino, how many Loom videos, like if you were coaching, you had a mentee, what would you say? Salim, do three in a day, one in a day? What does that look like?
Depends, honestly. So I always say that there's two states to operations. There's operations creation and then there's operations management. So you can imagine, like, if you were a city planner and you were tasked with, building the roads and, doing all the things related to planning the city, and then you had to go build the roads. So that's the actual creation piece of things. But then there's management and maintenance that needs to come in, right? We
Mm,
need to go and maintain those roads and make sure that people can continue to use them and put them under construction when necessary and reroute people another direction. So I find that it's really, really hard to, first and foremost, pin down an exact number of SOPs that a person would need to do. It would depend on size of company, size of your team, complexity of your, core offering or your core product or your core service, whatever that looks like for you. So I typically find that if you can at least deposit one screencast each day into your knowledge
mm,
base. That's
mm,
my opinion because I actually personally, and this is more of a personal belief, but I'll weave it into how I think about operations, is that I personally believe that we should be learning all the time. And if we can't find one meaningful thing that we've taken away from the day that we can incorporate into the person we wake up to be tomorrow, then we've lost the day, utterly
mm,
lost it. And so if we apply that same logic to our business and we can say, okay, if today in operating my small laundromat, I have now learned that this way is better than this way that I did it over here, or this is the way that I approach this particular thing. And I'm going to go ahead and make a vote into my learning category by mastering the art of knowledge transfer and depositing something into my knowledge base. I think that means that you've won the day.
wow, that's a great way to do that. This is so good. Really appreciating the knowledge transfer that you're doing here with us. That's great. Looking at the clock, we kind of have a few more minutes. Um, where should we go? A couple of more dominoes, should we go there, or would you say there's something else that you want to take us?
Yeah, I think a lot of the operational structure is really similar for a lot of companies. And so if you're struggling with operations, I find that if you're especially as a service-based company, we do support a lot of service providers. I think that's one of the places where people struggle most to get out of the operations because they start a service company based on their knowledge, based on the way that they do things, and then they grow it from there. So we have a ton of resources around how to streamline operations. If you're looking for a specific way to do that, you can always go over to operationsagency.com. We have a fantastic blog that you can kind of pick through where exactly you're struggling with operations, and you can learn a ton more. But the thing I'd love to, I think, go and highlight here that is probably one of the most challenging for small business owners is relinquishing control.
Mm,
Because I think that relinquishing control looks like loosening your grip on every single thing in the company and really trusting that the way that you have figured out how to do things is going to be enough to, help your team stand up on its own. And I find that it's often that owners will go to delegate certain things or give responsibilities to certain team members. And then the reason why it doesn't work out isn't because the team member doesn't understand what they're doing or isn't capable of doing whatever was tasked for them. It's often because the owner comes back in to solve all the problems and then breeds a lot
mm,
of bad habits or steps over, their people. So, from an operations perspective, we want to make things so clear for our team what roads they are leveraging, what systems they can be using, how, when, and why to do certain things, and really line that out for them. And I promise that I've seen this firsthand. The folks
mm,
that do the work, that really define exactly what they're looking for and exactly what the process is that they go through in each of their departments. They do that work one time and it can be leveraged for sometimes years to come. It's not usually a one and done project, right? Operations has a maintenance element, like I talked about before. But doing this really hard work means that you don't have to bulldoze the whole forest and, repave the roads. It means that you might just need to do a little maintenance here and there, right? And overall, you'll be so much farther along if you do the hard work and give up the control, because that's the way that companies grow big time. I don't know any organization that I've even personally advised or that I've ever been a part of in any meaningful way that is doing nine figures that doesn't have an incredible team, is built with people.
mm,
So I know some people are like, I don't have to have a ton of, operational structure if I don't have a huge team. That is true. And that's why our framework is so simple. And it's really, really important that early on we establish the cadence through which you plan to delegate things to your team, because it's only going to become more important as you grow.
mm. Wow, that's so cool. And I mean, one of the things I struggle, I mean, I see a lot of leaders struggle with, and not that I struggle, but I have to be very aware of, and I have to be very conscious of is making sure that I'm not stepping on folks that I've given them responsibilities. Case in example, today we had our entire company team meeting, and there's a facilitator, our operations person who runs the meeting, and I had to remember to not step in, and I would allow him to run it the way he wants to run the meeting that's going to give us the best results. So it required me to just kind of be conscious of that, because my
Yeah.
natural inclination is I'm the CEO. I'm gonna butt in and kind of do what I need to do. But it is damaged, I think, when that happens, right?
It certainly does. And you know what, Salim? I'm sure you knew this as you were being conscious, is that all it really does is serve your ego to like jump
Mm,
in and give the next best thing. It's not
mm,
actually helping the company. I say this to a lot of my clients, but imagine that your business is your baby, right? You start it, you grow it. It needs a lot of your time and energy in the very beginning. But then when does our baby become our toddler? or our adolescent and even our adult. Because what we do as founders all the time is we still treat a 10-year-old business like it's a baby and we change its diapers, even though if we were doing that in the real world with our kids and our 10-year-old was wearing a diaper, that would not be a very good measure of how great we are as a parent, right? Our goal is to
Mm,
create something that's confident and thriving and able to contribute outside of us entirely.
right.
And so that's what our aim needs to be in a company, is to really create an asset that independently of us, but based from our knowledge, right? I mean, we depart a lot of knowledge onto our kids, a lot of habits. We show lots of examples, lots of leadership. So that is
Mm,
also true with our team and with our company. So our goal, though, is to make that thing function completely independently of us. And I think it's so critical to think about, because just like in parenting, there are gray areas, right? When should we let the kid walk to, their friend's house by themselves,
mm,
right? There are gray areas where that stuff comes in. And that's why it's really important to surround yourself with other people, like podcasts like this, folks who've done a lot of these things, who can guide you in the right direction, provide you with examples, stories, frameworks, and things to support you along the way. But I haven't met any one individual company that hasn't been better from implementing some of this structure. It decreases the headache behind the scenes. It promotes
mm,
peace and
mm,
opportunity, but between team members and within projects. I see it increase profitability. I see people keeping clients for longer periods of time,
mm.
which increases lifetime value. I mean, it reaches into almost every single area of the company. So it's work worth doing, I
Yeah,
say.
yeah. And really circling it back to the one of the words you used early on in towards the beginning is sustainability. It
Mhm.
allows us to sustain as leaders. It allows the company to sustain. It allows our clients to sustain. It allows our team members to sustain. So all across, I mean, is I think a very huge, huge impact on a business that's successful and doing it the right way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, again, like I said before, my goal is to keep businesses in business and make founders so confident in what they've built that they just feel so fulfilled and they are ready to pour into themselves and the people around them and their
Mm,
communities, their family, their children, their friendships themselves. It's so incredibly freeing, or it can be, to be an entrepreneur, but I know that a lot of folks feel so constricted
yeah,
because they left from their 9 to 5 and then they created another job, and their boss kind of stinks. Makes them stay up
yeah,
super late.
right.
Um, so I'm hoping that by bringing some of these simple frameworks, I know a lot of folks, they get a little scared when they hear operations, right? They're like, well, what is it? And is it
Yeah.
everything? And what do I need to do? And this isn't my general skill set. I'm much more creative. And so I'm hoping that with some simple frameworks and some simple things to do, we can start to
Mm,
alleviate the stress of running a business and really
yeah.
create something more sustainable long term.
Yeah. Alison, how can folks reach out to you? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, totally. If you would like our 4 phase onboarding blueprint, I find that that's the very first thing that it actually often happens in service-based companies where they don't have a really clear onboarding process when they get new clients.
Mm,
So if you want that, it's absolutely free. You can send me a direct message on Instagram at Operations Agency. My team will get that for you. And I think it's super, super important to follow along. So if you are committed to building operations structure in the next year and beyond, we have so many incredible resources over on our social media, and that's going to be the main place where we will talk about all the things that we're doing to grow companies and make them more sustainable.
awesome. Alison, I'd love to bring you on this show if you don't mind in a month or 2 months or 6 months or something.
Yeah, of course. I would love to come back and share what is working for us now. I didn't even, so something else to consider is if you are in the thick of it, really feeling like, you don't have time and you're burning the candle at both ends. My book, The Sabbatical Method, released last year. It's really about how to take time off from your business in a way that
Mm,
allows it to grow. So that it operates a little bit like hard 75 for business owners who have just kind of really forgotten your mental health, personal health, physical health, any of those things. And so getting your hands on that would also be a really cool place to begin, and I think could give maybe just a little bit of a comforting breath of fresh air to anybody who's feeling like they're nearing that stage of burnout.
Awesome. Alison, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time you've given us and all the gems you shared with us.
Thanks, Salim. I had a really nice time. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You take care.